Good afternoon. I think it's a good time to get started. We're already running 5 minutes late, so we'll just steal 5 minutes or 10 at the end, because I have no shame. My name is John Solomon, and I would like to welcome everybody to this panel on the theme. Our title is, Has Trust in Democracy Survived the 2024 Election Year? Which is a very, very provocative title. It is, when I saw the participants here, my background's in cybersecurity, and frankly, I'm highly intimidated because there's an extremely, extremely high-profile group of panelists here. So I'm going to go in no particular order. Stephanie Ladel is active in open source, imagery intelligence, and geospatial intelligence researcher and trainer. We have Laetitia Avia from Avia Cabinet, a lawyer, a politician, and a former member of the French National Assembly, and lately with the Center for American Progress in Washington, D.C. And Lorena Martinez is Misinformation Program Manager at Logically Facts. Did I get that more or less right? Okay, so quality control, qualité suisse. Maybe a very, very brief introduction. It's a very provocative title, as mentioned, a very far-reaching one, so we'll do our very best to get through this very broad topic. 2024 was a bit of a year. It's not good for everybody's political stress levels, I think. We saw a record number of elections that saw incumbents challenged and even voted out of office, not only but to a large degree from extremist insurgent parties. This is on top of what we've seen over the last 10 years, is a rise in what's often termed quote unquote illiberal democracies, as well as coups, for example, in the Maghreb, and a few rays of light for democracy. So, for example, in Brazil and South Korea, we had some significant events happening. This year, we're also seeing tremendous demonstrations, voices rising up for democracy in countries like Serbia, also, for accountability in existing democracies in places like Greece. We're seeing Georgia, Turkey, most lately, are huge in the news. And I think we're all aware of the challenges that our democracies are facing. So, we've seen rising inequality, inflation, questions about climate change, automation leading to not only, but to a large degree, young people feeling left behind and somewhat deceived even. And on top of this, we see a tremendous growth over the past decade in disinformation and manipulation. What an organization who do some good videos on this calls FIMI, or Foreign Information Manipulation and Interference. And a lot of this is regardless of political side or ideology. There's a former head of the U.S. Central Intelligence Agency, Michael V. Hayden, who read a book called The Assault on Democracy, The Assault on Intelligence, and one of his themes was that you can't create divisions, but you can find existing divisions and exploit them, and we're seeing a lot of that. So given that we've seen, a lot of people, off the poster child. I'm Swiss, by the way, despite my accent. I have no stake in this. The poster child for a lot of this, obviously, is the 900-pound gorilla on the block, the United States, with a lot of people who, you would think are very democracy-oriented, just saying, I don't want to vote. It's all the same to me, right? So my question, I think, starting out, and I'd like to go to Laetitia to start out with, where are we? Where is democracy? That's a very specific question.
Yeah, that's a very tough question. Okay, first, we're talking here about trust, okay? And we've been talking about the US, you've been talking about the US. There's someone I usually don't quote, but that will be the first and last time I will quote, is Vice President J.D. Vance. He said one thing that is actually quite true. He said that if democracy was able to be destabilized by trolls, disinformation, etc., that means that this democracy is not strong enough, and it's weak to be destabilized by digital interferences. And I have to say, I agree with him. That's the only thing I will agree with him, okay? Just to make it very, very, very specific. Because everything we're going to talk about during this panel is about the amplification that every behavior we have on the digital space can have on the real space then. But there is nothing that was created by the digital space. And that's something that we always have to keep in mind. So where are we at? Well, we know our democracy are a bit weakened. We know that. We know that trust is a bit challenged, and it is amplified by everything that happened in the digital space. And so when we're in 2023, we could look at the map and we see, okay, in 24, half of the globe will be facing election, meaning that half of the globe will be subject to digital threats to democracy. I'm not saying maybe subject, will be subject. That's what we were saying in 2023. And at that point, the question was not what if that happened, but when will that happen, and what kind of digital threat will we be facing? So sometimes we can think about what is the most obvious to us, that is disinformation, misinformation. But it's not the only kind of threats we know. Well, obviously foreign interferences, but there are so many other ways to impact the trust. And we can think about the infiltration from that we can do through fast flag ideological. I don't know if you know this system that will mean infiltrate the other side, putting some ideas that will be in order to affect the legitimacy of this other side. So then people will start not trusting those ideas, thinking they are not legitimate and they are extremism, and finally I will have to look other options. So that's some of these situations that we could see in 2024. We could see a lot of election denial. We could see a lot of gender-oriented cyber attacks. We could see some compromise also. And all of that has this common aim, that is then to affect the trust that people will have in information and in institution. It's not just the plain disinformation we'll all think about. It's also affecting the look that you have on what is information. And if you don't know what to trust, then you stop sometimes getting informed. And ignorance is the major key when you want to go then to extremism and polarization. So in 2024, we had so many elections. We had the EU, we have the US, we had in some countries in Africa, South America, etc. If I can just give you a big look at what kind of digital threats we had. First of all, in the EU, we never had that much activism when it comes to disinformation. We have the data about that. The Observatory of European Media say that there's been the highest amount of fake news we never faced in 2024. There's been targeting mostly France, Germany, and Italy, and mostly coming from pro-Russia activism. We all know about that. There's been creation also of fake pages of newspapers. This is a highly sophisticated system to impact the trust that people will have in information. If I look at a page of a newspaper and I can't know if it's a real information or if it is created through AI, and then I don't know which information to trust, and so then I don't know I don't know if I can rely on information anymore, and that's what leads to extremism. And then, you know, all the fake data, fake polls, deep fakes, etc., etc. In the US, they went on another step that I thought that was quite interesting, because they created some videos that were supposed to be from the FBI. And that was some information saying that there was a high risk of violence, a high risk of terrorism, so people would not go vote in person and will vote on distance. That is something that is easier than to attack and to control, to make to have an impact on the polls. They created some fake documentation that was very, very close to official documentation. that were saying that there was some false vote, so then people will believe in the result of the election, and that's also an action that is quite strong, that is the denial. And also all the fake news about the environment of all the candidates, and so on and so on. There's been so many diverse type of actions. All of that is always the same thing. Just put in your head the thing that you don't know what to trust anymore, and then you don't know where your democracy is at. To answer the question you were asking me at the beginning, where are we at? Well, we don't know where we are.
So I think it would make sense to break that down into a couple of components, and I think a good place to start is disinformation with Lorena. I think when we talk about digital media, digital space, I think one of the main suspects is social media. I think we can all agree, because even if it's on whatever social media platform, I was made to behave, and I can't name any. So. But that tends to spill over into the traditional media space. And what we've seen with a lot of extremist groups that use disinformation, like what Leticia mentioned, is this idea that Steve Bannon, I think, came up with in the US called flood the field with bullshit, right? So nothing is true anymore because you can basically create your own narratives, because, the moment everything is lies, your traditional media is lies, and that means that what we put out has the same value. So maybe if you can give a little bit of it, and we should have your own mic, actually. Here we go, everybody. This is luxury here. If you can give a little bit of an overview of where are we specifically with the areas of disinformation and how we fight this with fact checking. What are some techniques both that bad actors, disinformation actors use? Maybe not just but primarily state actors, but how we can address this manufactured doubt from basically lies that are just plausible enough for voters to believe.
Thank you. I mean, there is a lot to unpack here. First, to say that new generations now, they don't consume media, they go into the social media to get their news. So everyone now has to be on social media producing content, and sometimes what she said about, like, you will see videos that are supposed to be from BBC, The Guardian, Le Monde, but they are fake, and they are not from those organizations, but they are created to mislead people. So what I would like to bring to the table is what we did as a fact-checking organization. I will not do justice because there are more than 400 projects around the world in 111 countries, but just a small picture of how we cover and how we fought misinformation and disinformation last year. One of the main things was through collaborations and partnerships. Fact-checking organizations came together at different levels, different regions, working with different stakeholders, either media outlets, platforms, institutions, research, and universities. And I'm going to talk about a project that is called Project Sakti in India, where it was a consortium between 100 fact-checkers and media outlets in the country to fight disinformation and misinformation. This was led by data leads, and it was supported by Google News Initiative. This was considered the biggest collaborative effort to fight misinformation about the elections in the country. And the project, the aim was to amplify what the fact-checking community was doing, the fact checks, the debunks that they produce, and the major media outlets will reproduce the information. Because one of the problems with the fact-checking community is sometimes that we don't get to the people that we want to. And secondly, they were promoting also to do the content not only in Hindi and in English, but also in other local languages, so we could reach smaller communities. And apparently the increase of regional language fact-checking, it was 180%. One of the fears that the fact-checking community had last year was this idea of like an AI tsunami, thinking that an AI video, audio or image was going to go viral and it was going to influence an election. This came obviously from 2023 at the end of the year when there was this viral deepfake audio that went on Facebook on the Slovakia elections. We didn't really see that happening in the elections. We saw how AI was used in other different ways, and I'm not saying AI is a risk because it's a risk, but we didn't see this in the content that we were fact-checking. we got an alert before the European elections that 24 hours or 48 hours we were going to get some kind of similar content as the Slovakia elections. We didn't. And we reviewed the elections, well, the coverage that we did for the India elections, and only 4% of the content that we fact-checked, it was about AI. The main technique that is being used over and over again, it has been cheap fakes. Video or photos that's been edited with very basic techniques, or mainly what you see is like all video, all footage that's been misattributed. And it's continuously being used over and over every time there is a breaking news event or every time there is an election. Also, what she mentioned about like the target of trust, targeting trustworthy media, of these videos of BBC, reliable media that are not coming from those, but they are being misled by people so they can believe, oh, you see BBC, you are going to believe what is being said there. The front pages of newspapers is something that we have seen more often. The imposter content, fake articles, fake sites that is overloading AI chat bots with this propaganda network that NewsGuard reported recently. So knowing what we are consuming, where, is becoming more and more important these days. And that's why one of the things that we also did as a fact-checking community was media literacy training and pre-banking, the idea of inoculating the society before these misleading narratives can strike. And media literacy, helping people, educate people to understand how they can be misled in the online space, what are the techniques, what they should be aware of. And one of the things that we did, and other fact-checking organizations did, it was by having a partnership with platforms. We partnered with TikTok to create media literacy videos, and they embedded these videos in their apps. Basically, for the European elections, someone will type something about the elections, a prompt will come up, and it will lead you to informative fact-check information about the elections and also the videos that we produce. These were seen by millions of people that otherwise they wouldn't see.
To their credit, I have my own feelings about it, but one good example of also the fact-checking being embedded, I think, was also the Twitter community notes, where I don't know what the state of that is. I don't use Twitter, but where people are able to basically say, no, actually, this is a correction of this, right? I think shifting gear a little bit, one of the challenges is not only disinformation. By the way, one thing I want to comment on AI content was if any of you have had a chance to look at some of the AI electoral propaganda videos that the AfD in Germany put out in the last couple of years, there's no sophistication. It's really just plain boom in your face. So that's by content. By contrast, when we're thinking, disinformation, well, actually, it's not even that sophisticated. But shifting gear, I think, to interference directly, outright interference. From Stephanie, I think if you could talk a little bit about one of the very, very big stories that we in Western Europe may have not seen as much as we should have in Romania, with the Georgescu candidacy. Yeah. That's what's going on in Romania. Maybe you could talk a bit about the attempt to interfere in that election.
Interesting case. Just I think it is. Is it okay for you? I just have to put it on my mouth. You said it's something about filling the place, and that's exactly that. It's there to make the place full. And when I hear Lorena, her rhythm, but also when she's saying about sheep fakes, that's something like a race that was going on 2024, and we need to be effective. And it's really complicated because they are everywhere, doing everything. Researchers can't do everything to debunk, pre-bunk. So what we are choosing to do. What I can say about what happened in 2024, and notably in Romania, is that to have a massive effect in the public opinion and a massive impact, you can't go unnoticed. You are visible because you make the surprise, so you attract the attention, and that's exactly what happened. For Georgescu, that was supposed to be a minor candidate. The poll said, well, maybe he will have 5% of the votes. he won the first round of the presidential election with 22% of the vote. So he attracted attentions of all open source researchers and authorities, intelligence agencies. It was really interesting because 10 days after that, the Romanian authorities declassified files. It's very quick. And it's about a sense of control, of responsibility, a sense of, I can say that, a sense of knowledge that you are vulnerable because you are a democracy and you have an electoral process, but you have a demonstration of strength because you understand that there are threats, but you are facing those threats. You are capable to talk about this, and that's exactly what they did, declassifying files 10 days after that. During an evening, so we were completely excited. That was the euphoria to check all those documentation. I don't know if you saw that, but it was in Romanian. Numerization was not good, so that's the day you buy ChatGPT license to put all of that, to have the OCR and the translation in a few seconds to see what is happening. So it's really interesting because it's not a notice, so you can work on that as a newsroom if you are a journalist, etc., etc. And what happened concerning the authority is what happened after that. The classification of files, but after that, the authorities decided to cancel the first round of the election. And look how quick it is. The 7th of March 2025, there was the second preparation of candidates for the first round of presidential elections that will be in 2025. Georgescu filed his candidacy. The 9th of March, it was rejected by the Central Election Bureau. He appeals this refusal, and the 11th of March, the Constitutional Court of Romania upheld the sentence. So it's all about demonstration of transparency, that we are weak, but we are strong facing the threats, and we are responsible. We show the world, and it's great for open source researcher because it's open data too. So you understand what is happening is, yes, 2024 was a mad year, and 2025 will be a race too. We have to be effective. We have to assume there's something about the citizens, there's something about the states, there's something about the researchers, the journalists, But Romania is, to me, is an iconic case of what happened in 2024.
I think if we just very quickly, I think for our colleagues in France, I think it's encouraging when the process works, and the 31st of March is also a good example of a similar situation. Sorry, Laetitia, you wanted to?
Yeah, if you allow me to just jump on this, because I think fact-checking is very, very important. It's critical. We have to do it. But what you can see in this situation, and also, as you were saying, when the AI was not sophisticated, and we also had another case in Germany, I think it was 2 years ago, when a candidate, she was the target of fake news saying that she was a prostitute in the past. And information was shown that it was fake information coming from Russia, etc. Here also, we had in Romania all the data that showed that there were amplifications of the content of this TikTok candidate from Russia. Does it change anything then in the polls? No, because the election is not the story of the entire country. It's not the problem of the entire people. Is this small portion of people who doesn't know where to vote. And that's this small portion of people who's going to tell who's going to win or not. And this kind of people, they are the one questioning everything. And they're the one who will be saying, there is no smoke without fire. So if there is even this fake news, it's because there is something else on the ground. And that's also why this disinformation is so, so hard to tackle.
It's interesting you mentioned that. There's a concept called the Keyes quotient, which was basically something that the concept that somebody came up with a guy named Alan Keyes in a Senate race against Obama, which is basically the 30% or so of people who are just so on the extreme, they won't change their minds no matter what you tell them. And they subsequently said, actually, that was a joke. No, not really. So I'm actually glad you mentioned Germany, because I think on top of Stephanie's mention of the constitutional mechanisms in Romania, we talked about technology, we talked about platforms, we talked about norms. Let's talk about policy. So you're the legal and political expert in the room. So what is and should be happening on the policy side to deal with this, to prevent this, to remediate this?
There's been several attempts to find ways to tackle it, because especially when it comes to election, it's very important to not be the one saying what is true or what is not, because this is counterproductive. Well, when we look at the European regulation, today we only have the DSA. The DSA will only help after to really understand if there is any mechanism from the platform to amplify some fake information. We'll ask the tech companies to pack some means to make sure that there is no fake information, or also to have some elements to debunk some information. But it's still, in my mind, something that comes after what happens. We had some ideas in France. We had a law that is called the law of fake news. That is a law that is only applicable during the election time, and that helped to withdraw content in 24 hours, very shortly, when it comes to fake information. This law is useless because no candidate wants to use that, because every candidate can be then subject to the application of the laws to its own content. So it's a void attempt, I will say. Now there is a European regulation that is about political advertising, that I think is very important, because it provides transparency on the amplification of content, on the financing of content, and there is no possibility to have foreign financing of campaigns during the time of the election. So I think transparency here is very important. So people will know this content has been amplified from this country. And that's something that could be the trigger to change things. But for me, the one who really have the power to change things here still are the big techs, because they are the one seeing the flow of the flow of the information, and they are the one who really can help mitigate all this disinformation.
Thank you. By the way, sorry, that's not mine. If anybody wants a free iPhone, there's one over there. Okay. So maybe building on that, Stephanie, you mentioned some of the constitutional means that, and the transparency means that in Romania's case were applied to help deal with this interference situation. Taking that a step further and talking on the broader scope of influence operations, disinformation, interference, etc. Would you want to build on what Leticia just said? What steps can democratic states take? What research is there on the types of responses that we've seen in the wild to combat and mitigate these issues?
Okay, so the question is about the states. There are a lot of things that are done by journalists. International journalism is great for that. Concerning the states, I think about Germany. Germany was not in acting after a threat, or after an action, after an operation, or debunking something. He was communicating about the preparation of the parliamentary elections 2025. He prepared a big test with the main social media platforms just before, and he made it public. So it's something like, be aware, we are prepared, maybe, in some kind, and we are working with the social media platforms to to do those kind of comprehension, that it's not about the last few days, but it's a big preparation. And well, it's another demonstration of strength. And I think about France, just simply France, that has another style of action, because we had prosecutors in France that decided to launch an investigation about the algorithm of X, Twitter, okay, X, it's not clear, so Twitter, Elon, voilà, no, Twitter, and it's interesting because massive operations are exploiting the data that is collecting and sorting by those commercial firms. And you have to work on those commercial firms and their data and the way they are collected and the way they are sorted to understand how it can be manipulated. So it's another style of preparation and not completely a response of action, but a response of the threats. I don't know if something is better than another, but I'm interested in looking at those different style of actions. And of course, we can't have zero damage as democracies. So maybe it's also something I want to prepare you. But there's no zero damage. But it's interesting how trust is something that is built. And we are on construction every time, and I think we are also in construction right now.
I think it's a very important point that also, I think, with disinformation and again, flooding the field with bullshit, it's much easier to destroy trust than it is to build it, because it's a long, long, difficult process. I'd like to switch the next two topics around, actually, because I think it will flow, it'll bring it'll let the conversation flow a bit more. Going to another specific example, maybe for the two of you, Brazil. There's two major different elections, one in 2016, I believe, one in 2024. One of your comments was the difference in impact of, for example, WhatsApp. Can you talk a bit about, what steps were taken to fight disinformation, what the impact was of these, what the different impacts was on platform, what outcomes are we seeing of learning that was observed, over the last, I'd say, almost decade now in the Brazilian elections? Who wants to start?
Well, my expertise.
Well, I can start. So we had election in Brazil in 2016 and 2020, if I remember well, yeah? Or something like that. Okay. So for the first elections, we all say that the election was under WhatsApp, and that WhatsApp was a tool that was used to influence the election. I have to say that now we have a bit more data, now we have time to really look at this information. We've been mitigating this assertion, and that all this fake news, disinformation that was sent to people through WhatsApp was not maybe the trigger of the election, but it's the studies that are coming now today. What happened during the second election? They were prepared. They are very well prepared. They knew what kind of tools were used to influence the election, and at that time, the idea was that it was disinformation through WhatsApp at maximum, and so they gave the powers to their Supreme Court to act. And that's exactly what happened in Romania too, is that there is a moment when you need to give the power to an entity that is still reliable for the people and that will put all the means to make sure to safeguard the integrity of the elections. And that's been very, very the fight of the prosecutor, Alexander, I don't remember his last name, the one who really did this work in getting new powers of investigation, getting the power to mitigate the content on WhatsApp. That is something that we cannot do under the DSA today. That is very difficult to do, except on very, very large communications. And then to just take down this content and prosecute the people. and kind of succeeded. I mean, there's been some moves around the election, but there's not been any strong election denial from the last election because it was a completely different situation from the first one.
And you mentioned Germany before. I think it's interesting because you mentioned the EU, we have trouble taking these kinds of steps. And Germany has a very, very strong, Verfassungsschutz, the constitutional protection agency, has very, very strong hate speech and also media accountability laws. To what degree can on the one hand, the behavior that we saw in Brazil and also the kinds of frameworks that we have in countries like Germany that are more lacking, for example, in the UK or the US or other states, be used to influence people's behavior, individual citizens' behavior? And I want to get to you on a related topic in a second. How will this drive people's voting behavior? Will it get more people to vote if we can use these mechanisms to fight the disinformation?
Is it for me again?
Yeah.
Yeah, I believe it all comes again about the question of trust. For example, during the last election in the US, the fact that so many people were thinking that there will be some activism around the election make that there were a high level of stress during this time of voting. And this is all we have to work on. If you have the strong foundations of an organization that can really fight this disinformation, that can make sure that they can protect the integrity of the elections, then you feel more confident. And I think in Germany, they have been the first ones with the NetzDG, for example, to tackle hate speech. They've been very strong on the application of the DSA. They've been very strong on the regulation of social media. I'm not saying that it works. I don't have the data, but I know that people feel more confident and then they have more trust on their institution. Everything here is about trust. It's not about efficiency, it's about trust.
And I'm fighting with JC for time, so so Lorena, I think following up on this, right? I mean, there's two. I have a question for you here, asking you for a few examples of real-world harm. I think what I'd like to append to that also is to expand that a bit with the education aspect that we already talked about. Can you give some information about some real examples and challenges the fact checkers face? But then also add to that a little bit, how do we bring this results of this fact-checking to the average voter, specifically that small percentage that Leticia mentioned, this really small undecided group? How do we actually get them to accept that, build that trust, based on what the fact-checkers find?
The thing is that today, the fact-checking is being very polarized. Like, if you ask on the far right, people think that fact-checkers are manipulating, that they are not providing evidence, they are not providing facts, that we are all kind of like censorship. And this was said also by Zuckerberg when he decided to dismantle fact-checking in the US. So we are going a bit backward, and again, fact-checking is being used now by politicians, so it's been like we have now like some bad press. And something I want to add, Leticia, about like trust. It is important that society also have what we discussed about media skills. Like in the Nordics, people fall less for misinformation because they have better media skills that they are taught at the schools. And one of the best examples is in Finland. So one of the best things to educate people early on, before even they have a phone, and they have media literacy skills like critical thinking, lateral reading. They know all this, and they learn this in a school. It's very difficult when you believe in something. It's very difficult to change your mind. It's very difficult. Like what we said about like people are gonna read things that are gonna reinforce what they already believe. And doesn't matter if I provide you context or more information, it's gonna be very hard. And I think we are getting a more polarized society where this is becoming more and more difficult. And going back to like what are the challenges that we face in the fact-checking community and we are gonna face this year, is about how the misinformation ecosystem has changed so much, so quickly. We have so many threats with the AI, with algorithms, but the fact-checking process hasn't really changed that much. It's still very manual, it's very labor-intense, so we need to get partnerships to work with better tools, get better tools to analyze deepfake videos, because it may take us 1 day or 2 days to verify or fact check something, while someone in 2 seconds can create a video saying this is BBC. Also scale and speed. We need tools that will help us to kind of digest lots of data, do the repetitive tasks, and give us signals of where is the most harmful content that we can fact check, because it is impossible for fact checking organizations to fact check everything that is online. And again, there's more and more content, with the AI, there's going to be more and more content, and it's going to be even more personalized and targeted to your personal needs and your way of thinking.
Can the fact checking be automated?
I would say half and half. I believe in the human in the loop concept of like you use AI tools, machine learning, but you will always need a fact checker to verify what the content is being produced. But I believe in the process of like having AI and automation of parts that are more like repetitive, and then the human will participate in the parts that are very like important to kind of close the process.
Yeah, and especially because if you have an AI fact-checking, the first cyber attack will be just to do some attacks on AI to just make sure you don't trust this AI anymore. And so that's last.
Good point. Last one, since we're running on time. Stephanie, I think this one is more in your area. I think you've got access to a lot of research from popular reactions to misinformation and fact checking. A two-part question: do you think that, based on what Lorena said about you can't, it's very, very difficult to convince somebody who has an opinion, right? Do you think initiatives like what we've seen in Facebook in India, for example, or in WhatsApp, think before you share videos, are effective? And how do we get, in addition to early education that Lorena mentioned, how do we get people to be more aware, to be more conscious of the challenges and how to process them, how to deal with them?
I have an idea that is not mine. That is an idea from someone I work with, that is Elliot Higgins, that is here in another place, in another room, about resilience. Elliot Higgins is the owner of Bellingcat, the founder and owner of Bellingcat. And what he spread since 2020, I will say, is we need to demonstrate, okay, we have to demonstrate that we are reaching a part of the truth, investigating, etc. But now what Bellingcat is doing is teaching people how to investigate, because you can be the most trustworthy newsroom that explain everything you do, etc. You become someone that is, how do you say that? You said earlier, is it more or less right, what I said? Okay, so the trust is something that is like a gas. So you need to take the person and make them active. Okay, you can debunk, you can use your critical thinking. Okay. We can teach you how to investigate. I think it's maybe one of the other steps that we are exploring, and that Bellingcat is exploring for a few years.
Thank you. And I want to wrap up by giving a huge shout out to an organization in Romania specifically called Veridica.ro. It's a collective of Romanian journalists that's active throughout the entire Central Eastern European region, that doesn't just fight disinformation. They have an English-speaking and a Russian-speaking site, but they also educate teachers, for example, on how to educate. Phenomenal group. They're unfortunately only in Romanian on Blue Sky, by the way.
ChatGPT.
Yeah. Thanks very much for all of our panelists. Encourage everybody, if you have any questions, to follow up. And thank you for your attention.